Ladies, gentlemen, and monster hunters alike, welcome as always. I am Cosmic, and today we're finally getting to review the Blood and Wine expansion for The Witcher 3. Blood and Wine is the final expansion for The Witcher 3 and will be essentially what is known as, for, at least for the moment, the final quest that Geralt will ever go on, because CD Projekt Red have said that they are not looking into creating another Witcher game for the foreseeable future, and that's the way it pretty much is going so far. So ultimately, this is going to be the final chapter in Geralt's life as we should know it. Blood and Wine is a pretty hefty expansion, and it is a ton bigger than anything that has come previous. If you think back to Hearts of Stone, you're looking at that added a few new places in the old regions of Novigrad. You're looking at an entire new region for this DLC, alongside a bundle of quests, main story quests, side quests, random encounters, enemies, items, the whole package. It is a pretty hefty investment in terms of content. The expansion itself is set in the region of Toussaint, which is essentially supposed to be modelled after the south of France. So we have knights errant looking to do fabled quests for their loves, and we also have a ton of winemakers, vineyards, and beautiful scenery. Toussaint is a nice break from the aboding, overbearing dark environs of Velen and Novigrad, and instead brings a new lease of life in terms of colour to the game. It's a lot brighter, it's a lot more colourful, there's a lot of different flora and fauna, and ultimately it's just nice to have somewhere new to explore. So ultimately, why is Geralt here? Well, essentially the game starts off and two knights from Toussaint, Geralt's mates from back in the day, so to speak, have gone to Velen to look for him. After they find you, you fight some bandits, and they tell you that the Duchess Henrietta of Toussaint, who is essentially the Queen of Toussaint, is looking to hire Geralt because a beast has been attacking her civilian population and doing a load of murders, etc., etc. And if he accepts, he'll be handsomely rewarded, as is always the case. Geralt is a little bit apprehensive because working for royalty has not done him a huge amount of favours in the past, i.e. Foltest, for example. But he agrees regardless, and off he pops to Toussaint. Now, while in Toussaint, you actually find out that the beast has been murdering people and posing them, and so it's not your average monster that is to deal here. Alongside his handsome reward for the contract once the beast is killed in terms of gold, Geralt also receives an upfront payment of a house in Toussaint, which you actually have your own personal house now, which is upgradable, and you're able to rest there, read books there, save your game, stash your items, upgrade its contents, etc., etc., hang your own paintings and all that kind of thing, hang your own trophies, and it's a nice little addition to the game, so Geralt can, sit in the south of Toussaint and just relax with his own vineyard and winemaking. Now, I don't want to spoil the story too much, however, I will say that the main storyline is absolutely fantastic. It is very intriguing. It brings back characters from Geralt's past. It's all very well written, very well paced, and it's once again CD Projekt Red storytelling at its finest. It's a lot different than what has come previous in The Witcher 3, but it has the same tone and the same feel, and it is ultimately one of those expansions that is well worth the price in terms of the amount of content and the amount of narrative quality that you get from that content. In terms of content when you're not doing the main quest, there is a ton of side quests to do in Toussaint, which is ultimately where the real humour of the game starts to shine through. For example, escorting a man to take pictures with his head camera, which is essentially like Google Glass but for medieval times, taking him through to take pictures of wildlife, etc., all that kind of thing. There's a ton of fun stuff in there to do. Most interestingly, there is a side quest that will grant you access to new Witcher mutations that essentially give you a end game progression system, albeit in a small form, but it is a nice addition to the game, so that once you reach those higher levels, you then have something to put your time and energy into. To give you an idea of the scope of the game and the scope of the content that you will actually be receiving in Blood and Wine, you're looking at around 20 hours worth of game time there, give or take, whatever you want to do. Now, that is a pretty hefty expansion in terms of content and in terms of narratively driven content. You know, the actual region of Toussaint, the map, is a fairly large map. There's tons to explore on it. There's tons of things to see. There's tons of things to do. I particularly like the addition of dyes and the ability to basically customize your armor color and stuff like that. There's a ton of things to do that's a lot of fun. There is even a new Gwent tournament for those Gwent fans like myself out there. There's tons of new cards to collect. I can't get enough of Gwent. It's one of those things that's a secret addiction. It's a game within a game, so to speak, and I just cannot get enough of those bloody cards. The thing is, ultimately, with Blood and Wine expansion is that it's nothing new in terms of The Witcher 3, right? It doesn't change the game in any giant way. It just adds little additions to it to make it a more pleasurable experience. I did want to touch on something that did annoy me a little bit, which was the actual 1.2 patch, which essentially changed a lot of stuff in terms of The Witcher. So, for example, enemies now scale. And there's a host of UI improvements and inventory improvements that people who haven't been back to the game in quite a while will find very different, and hopefully they'll find improvements over what was before. So if you haven't played the game since launch, then you're going to find a huge number of improvements and changes to the game that mostly work in the game's benefit. Overall, I think my time with Blood and Wine has been, how should you say, bittersweet in some respect. I absolutely loved Toussaint. I loved the quest. I loved everything about the expansion. It was phenomenally made. It was well executed. It was high polished. It was fantastic. And I think Toussaint as a region is one of the most beautiful ones that CD Projekt Red have ever created thus far. The problem is that it's the last one, and I don't like that, especially considering that they've introduced us to a completely new region. It just makes you think, what else is out there? Why can't we go to Ophir, Kovir, all the other, Zerrikania, all the other places that are in the Witcher universe? Give me content for that too. And with this essentially being the last ever time we see Geralt for the foreseeable future, if possibly ever, because CD Projekt Red have said they are not working on another Witcher game for the foreseeable future, which will be quite some time. We're talking years and years. It makes the whole experience a somber one at the very end, and I think that CD Projekt Red do need to continue the Witcher franchise in some form, even if it was a break from Geralt, even if they said, right, we're going to do, The Witcher 3 and The Witcher 1 and The Witcher 2 were a trilogy of Geralt. They were a trilogy of the White Wolf. Now we're going to do The Witcher 4, but it's not going to contain Geralt. We're going to do something different this time. And I'd be okay with that, because I think there's more to be explored in the Witcher universe than just Geralt's storyline. But ultimately, it did make me sad to see that this is going to be the last of Geralt. That being said, however, you're looking at a giant expansion. You could even push 30 hours into this, doing some of the different things that they've put into the expansion. So it is a well-built expansion, well worth the money, and we're talking about content that's, they've put more content into this expansion than some developers put into games. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. So for me personally, it is a definite must-buy if you're a big fan of The Witcher 3. If you like The Witcher 3 and you liked Hearts of Stone, then Blood and Wine is going to be right up your alley, even more so than Hearts of Stone ever was. I am giving away a free copy of the Blood and Wine expansion, so make sure to hit the link in the description below. It doesn't matter if you have Steam or GOG, I will get the expansion which works with your game. And as always, do like, subscribe, and leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.